With me is Bronwen Maddox, who's the Director of the Institute for Government. Nice to see you. Does tomorrow's vote on the second reading of the bill, does that effectively become the fourth meaningful vote?
Well, no, it is a different kind of thing, and it does. It is the beginning of a different process, and it will test for the first time, really, whether MPs are going to try and put formal amendments to this piece of legislation.
Right. Okay. So the government won't see it that way. This is an entirely separate thing. Tell me what's in the withdrawal agreement bill, because we talk about it a lot. But what is it? What is it? What's in it? What's contained in it?
Well, three-quarters of it is the same as Theresa May's deal, but the other quarter is really quite different, and in summary, makes for a less close relationship with the European Union than Theresa May's one would have done. And as we've heard emphatically over the past 3 days or so, it's very different in how it treats Northern Ireland. It says that Northern Ireland will remain effectively in the EU's customs union and closely aligned to the single market, and so therefore that there have to be some kind of checks in getting goods from the rest of the UK over to Northern Ireland. And it provides for consent, which is new, again, from Theresa May's deal, so that the Northern Ireland Assembly would have to vote every 4 years of whether or not these things would go through. That's been controversial too. And then when it comes down to what it does say about relations with the European Union, they are less close in what it says about the single market or how it treats customs and so on. Those things are less close, though Boris Johnson did have to make one concession, which is offering something of a level playing field, that the UK wouldn't have a giant competition on regulations and standards.
So just from what you said out there, it is a hugely complex piece of legislation, and that's why the MPs across the road are saying we need some time to be able to study this. But we should also remember there are two parts to the withdrawal agreement that we've had. The legally binding bit,
which is called the withdrawal agreement.
Exactly. And then there's the future, the political declaration, which is non-legally binding.
That's right.
Now, if the MPs were to amend the political declaration, I imagine the government could live with that, because they could change it at a future date if they want an election.
That is much easier for the government to cope with, because it is a much shorter 5-page expression of intent about future relations with the European Union. But the withdrawal agreement takes an international treaty, the withdrawal agreement, and writes that into UK legislation, and amendments to that do give the government much more trouble, particularly, for example, on the issue of customs union. That's the one the government's afraid of.
Well, that was the one I was going to pick up. Let's supposing that they've managed to get a vote for a customs union into the withdrawal agreement part of it. Presumably that would mean the government would have to go back to Brussels and renegotiate, wouldn't it?
Depends on the wording of it, but very likely it would, and that is something the government would be very, very loath to do.
So they would pull it?
Not necessarily. I wouldn't make any promises or firm predictions at this kind of point, but there's several ways in which those supporting a customs union could try to write that in, and what you've just described is probably the most troublesome for the government.
Very interesting. Bronwen Maddox, thank you very much indeed for that.